Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. You propose the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Machine Pun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello, and welcome to the Punch Show, where we are joined today by, her name is Ty Ross, but you probably know her as Mike Pence's other mother, which is just I remember there are a couple of people that I just saw their name and followed them purely on their name, and so that one is. Because he's actually kind of got like two mothers, so now he's got three. It was a brilliant. He's got his mother and he's got his wife that he calls mother, and so you're his other mother.
I'm his other mother. Yes.
That one, and there was Anne Rand Paul is another one of my favorites.
I like that.
Ivans
I like that, and I'm the same way, Kelly. Like names like Spiro Agnew's Ghost, Shogi's Ghost, or Devin Nunes' Cow. Like
I don't know. I think Lime in a Coconut left.
I'll see a name and then I'm like, I like that.
And there was one guy. I don't know what happened to him, but his name was Dustin Nguyen, like with the Nugyn.
Yeah.
And I told him, you should just change your name to All We Are is Dustin Nguyen.
Oh, and I like that.
So he did, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to have to do that. So anyway, now you have been on Twitter for a while.
Yes.
And how many followers you got? Like 125,000 or something?
I think I just crossed 130. Something I'd never ever imagined. Like I had like 400 followers when I left the Republican dark side and became progressive. And it's so crazy what TYT was coming up in my feed on Facebook. And I was at a point, this was before the 2020 election, and I just kind of between 2016 and 2020 just kind of checked out until things seemed to start getting really real. Mm-hmm. And I started paying attention more. And I guess the algorithm, I don't know, but they were coming up. And at the time, Jake and Anna and the whole TYT team, they were saying things that I felt. The Young Turks.
Oh, the Young Turks. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they were saying things that I didn't really know how to articulate because I hadn't been in a progressive space in that aspect. I'd always kind of been my kind of Republican box, but also being not apathetic necessarily, but not paying as much attention as I should have been prior to. And I was obsessed and I could not get enough. And then it was like every video, then subscribing to their channel. And it was like every day I felt, and it just kind of made me stronger feeling in that I could voice that I wasn't alone. And so then I went back to Twitter after many, many years. And I saw, man, like this is a much better environment for me cerebrally. Politics, what's going on, social justice, etc. And Facebook was just a hamster wheel of the lowest common denominator of, what I say. There was no intellect and I needed more. I wanted more engagement. I wanted to know more. I wanted to get a hold of resources that could bring me up to speed on what I had been neglecting.
People are always saying we shouldn't talk to Republicans, we shouldn't reach out to Republicans, but I disagree. I think if you gain a Republican, you actually get 2 votes because they lose one and you get one, so it changes the dynamic by 2 votes. So it's twice as valuable. And then I've also noticed, once like converts are a lot more evangelical than than anybody else. Like once they've switched, they're like, whoa, so you gain more than 2 actually.
They're kind of all in, but that's the radical part of them. I would rather it come. It's like when people say you switch one addiction for another. So maybe you were addicted to drugs or alcohol, and then working out helped you, but then you become a working out fanatic.
Yeah.
And then, or in other ways, and to me, you still haven't really worked out or dealt with what drove you to that radicalization. And while you may not be in that particular arena, and that sounds great, you still need to kind of dig down and like understand and realize what drove you to that in the first place, to keep yourself from going back to any other type of radical, position or person. And I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a good example of that, not just Trump, but in every kind of aspect. And it's like I said, it's something that people really need to think about. What is driving the radicalization? What is it? Like, I don't know if it's inherent. I don't know. And I know people say, oh, hate is taught and this, and it is. But so is anti-hate. So is anti-racism. Those things are taught as well. And if you really do want to change or be a part of change or really understand or know what's going on, then you will look to being taught. The opposite. If it hasn't worked for you in 50 years, in 40 years, there comes a time where you need to start really thinking about like inherently changing or growing. I think that's a better word. I don't know if people really have the ability to change in the black and white aspect, but I do believe they have the opportunity to grow. And with growth brings about a different perspective, perception, and different way of living, being, and doing. And that's what, rather than you need to change your views or you need to change your ways. What does that mean? Like I can tomorrow put my left shoe on my right foot. That's change. But you know, like technically
not comfortable change. My wife was a Republican when we started dating, and then we were driving somewhere, and she asked me why I was a Democrat, and I said, well, because it makes the most sense to me. And she says, well, what about abortion? And I asked her, well, what about abortion?
Yeah.
She says, don't you want to stop abortion? And I asked her, well, do you want to, that's kind of like not the right question. The right question is, do you want to make abortion illegal or do you want there to be fewer abortions? And because people aren't going to stop having abortions just because you made it illegal, right?
Exactly.
So I show, I explained to her how abortion rates get lower, how much they go down when the women that are getting them have a better economic opportunity ahead of them. Like the biggest reason for abortion is, and I don't think that the reasons matter in terms of whether or not the women should have the right. Just want to clarify that. But most women, like when they have a belief that they can raise that child, are more willing to have the child, right? So, if you present opportunities for them to have the baby, to be able to raise the baby, to be able to provide for the baby through things like healthcare and nursery care, and they can have a job while they're raising him, and WIC and all of those kinds of things matter.
Yeah.
And if you care about the baby and not just about the birth, abortion rates go down a lot more than if you just reduce the number of clinics or outlaw the abortion. And she was like, well, I think I want fewer abortions because that's the important part. And
Yeah.
so, like, on that car ride, she became a Democrat, and now she's like Bernie Sanders or something. Like, she's like, she got mad at me because I voted for Elizabeth Warren instead of Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary. She was like, "You're supposed to vote for Bernie. What's wrong with you?"
Oh my
Anyway,
gosh, your wife turned into a Bernie bro, a Bernie sis, a Bernie sis. No, that is hilarious. And but the thing is that the abortion issue, they try to reduce it all to black and white. Like every abortion has to do with like some girl who got drunk at a bar
mhm.
and went and like had a one night stand,
Yeah, right,
and
right.
not the nuances. And it wasn't until it was easy before Roe was overturned to just kind
Mhm,
of stay on those. But when we started to see real effects, women who have complications, women who were denied health care, women who were denied emergency treatment, women who had to bleed out. You know, like I said before, it was just kind of easy to play both sides of, oh, I'm pro choice, I'm pro. But after Roe, it really got real. And
mhm.
we had real physical examples. Like we could sit all day like in a classroom and say, well, this is also, but having real life examples of children who lost their mothers or husbands who lost their wives, and you know, parents who lost their daughters, and
Mhm.
how that is impacting, not to mention, you know, women being refused prenatal care
Yeah.
because of quote unquote religious beliefs. I don't know what religion, but whatever.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, it's like
it's silly.
it's opened a can of worms that, and so it's like they just kind of gloss by that. Those that still want to kind of keep along that one talking point, they just skip over, ignore, don't acknowledge any of those things. There's an inability on the right these days, it seems, to even just say, yeah, that's not cool. I don't agree with that. That's not good. We need to do better. Like there 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 is none of that. And I think that's probably the most frustrating part for a lot of us these days, where we're just like, I'm over it. I'm done trying to reason with the right. I'm done, because it has become so overwhelming, the inability or unwillingness of them to actually conversate.
I had a show like a year ago, and there were 4 women that came on that had, received abortions when they were younger, and 3 of the 4 of them said they got the abortions because they were in an abusive relationship. Like, they weren't raped, it wasn't rape babies, but their boyfriend or husband, would either abuse them or, like, physically or emotionally, and,
Absolutely.
so they didn't want to have that baby because if they had the baby, that meant that man was in their lives for the rest of their lives, and they
Exactly.
just do not want and it is something that I never would have thought before. Like, I never thought of that because 'cause I'm a guy. Why would I think about that, you know? And it's like that was like I was already of the opinion, like, I don't have a right to even have an opinion on abortion, but that reinforced it because I realized there are things that women go through that men will never even think about that
Yeah.
will, like, we just I don't have a right to say what black people should do or, I'm like, I couldn't have like I'm the perfect uh situation to thrive in America. I'm a white cisgender straight male. Uh but not everybody is, and it's like I don't have an opinion. I don't even have a right to an opinion on what it's like to be a person of color or gay or a woman or any of those things. I just know that they have a right to determine for themselves what they do.
No,
Uh,
and I completely understand that. However, you do have an opinion, and you do have a
mhm,
right to voice that opinion. Not saying that you are pretending to walk in the shoes of someone
mhm,
else. an
Yeah.
LGBTQ person or a person of color or a woman, etc. However, as a human being, we know what's right and what's not right.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that absolutely, and honestly, there are a lot of cisgender white men who are also affected by abortion. And I'm not talking about the partner that they're calling Greg Abbott on because they left them, but I'm talking about that young couple who he's doing his best, she's doing her best, and maybe they are using birth control,
Mhm.
which we know isn't always, but they're not ready. He's not ready. So I
There's
do
that
wish that
young
we
man
would.
from Texas, I can't remember his Ryan, I think, that walked into the
Oh,
bathroom and
yes.
found his wife.
Yes, he has been a very, very strong advocate. But
He
I
was on
would,
the show too, and he was telling me about like when it happened, when he found her. And it just really gets me. Because it was like I can't imagine having to go through that. He has a 2-year-old too. And so he puts his wife in the car. He can't leave his 2-year-old at home. And so he's got his wife in the car, he's got his daughter in the back. His wife is like drifting in and out of consciousness, and he's trying to keep her awake. And so he's got to drive like the closest hospital had already turned her away. So he didn't want to go there. So he had to drive like half an hour to the next closest hospital to actually get care for her. And so he's like yelling at his wife the whole way. And his 2-year-old doesn't understand why he's yelling. And so she's sitting there going, Daddy, why are you yelling at mommy?
yeah.
You know? And just
See, now you're
people
gonna
should
make
not
me
have to
cry,
go
Kelly. You
through
know
that.
I'm a big mush. You're gonna make
Like
me.
people should not have to go through that.
No, and you are absolutely right. In 2001, and this was still, pre like internet, like today. But I'd already had a child. I'm high risk, and I felt this pain like in my side, and doing a little research or whatever, and I was like, I think I'm having an ectopic. This doesn't feel
Mm.
right. And I go to I was in Dallas. I went
Did
to
you know you were
Baylor.
pregnant or?
Yes, I did. I pretty much, yeah, I know my body. And I was like, oh. But when I saw the lines, but they were faint, and just kind of what medical knowledge I did have. I was married to a physician, um, and so I went to the emergency room. And when someone comes in pregnant, the first thing you think they're going to do is give an ultrasound, give you a pregnancy test, give an ultrasound. That's pretty standard when going into the emergency room. I'm there for hours, hours and hours, and I'm in pain. I don't know, 4 or 5 hours later, no ultrasound, no nothing. You're discharged. You're fine. I put on my clothes. Kelly, I was in the lobby on my way out of the hospital, and I collapsed. It ruptured.
Oh my goodness.
I I woke up strapped to a gurney, being rushed into the room, and they're trying to explain to me what happened. And I had 3 surgeries, including a DNC, and lost part of my fallopian tube. And afterwards, the doctor, Dr. M, and she explained to me everything that happened. And I'm grateful to her because she didn't have to like call Ken Paxton to get permission to save my life,
Yeah.
But when she went through, and I was grateful to her, but I was angry at the people there because I thought if you had given an ultrasound, you would have seen there wasn't a baby in my womb, or even the remnants of the freaking zygote or fetus or anything in there. And if I had gotten into that car and been on the way and that had happened, then my oldest daughter would be an orphan
Wow.
at this point. So when I see stories, and this was 2021 and it's still, and I have 4 living kids, but I am high risk, and I literally had to have a shot with my youngest because I was like ready to give birth to keep me from going into labor like 2 months in. It's on bed rest, everything else. And the 1 week I forgot, I went into labor. And, you know, I had a black female OBGYN, which was the wildest shit I've ever seen in my life. And afterwards, she goes, well, I tightened up your C-section scar because I saw that it was a little like jarred and a little, and I'm thinking only a woman would just thinking that after like getting my baby out safely. Like, you know what? While we're here, let me just
You just
tighten
do a
up
little touch
a
up,
little cosmetic surgery.
like if the fireman decides to, fix your curtains on the way out or something.
Right? Let me just but it's just a testament to and you know in Texas where black women are 4 times as likely to die in childbirth. Like I'm really, really grateful that I had my children at a time where I didn't have to go through this. So it hurts me, it pains me. You know, my first husband was a law enforcement officer and I was a victim of DV and after. And what you were talking about is I always think about is that I'm so glad I didn't get pregnant. Because when he went to work, after he put a gun to my head and said I could kill you and nobody would give a shit, he went to work. I grabbed what I could in a bag and I left. And that was the last time I tried to lay eyes on him. I called a
Wow.
friend and I was gone while he was at work. But if I'd had a baby and then him also being, you know, a local police officer,
Hmm.
what would I have? What standing would I have had if he decided he
Hmm.
wanted to take custody? I wasn't allowed to work. I wasn't allowed to drive, have a license, leave the house while he was at work to then turn around and she can't take care of these kids. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have you know. So I look back and yeah, that is a very, very real issue that women have to deal with. And like I said, there are so many things that people don't think about or take into account, even those like yourself who are allies and are advocates. But there are still things that don't enter corners of your mind
Hmm.
to think about, you know, because
And
this
that's
is,
why we need to at least try to learn about them. You know, um, I'm not saying like I don't watch every black movie, or every gay movie, but I think like have you ever seen the movie Sense8 or this TV series Sense8?
no. What's that?
Um, it's a really unique movie. There's these 8 different people that were born on at the same time, and they're like all connected, even though they're all around the world. And
Oh, I like that.
they can like enter each other's consciousness. And so like one of them is like this uh Korean girl that's really good at martial arts. That there's a bus driver from Nigeria that is a big Jean-Claude Van Damme, whatever. How you say it. He's a big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
So she like takes over his body and kicks a bunch of
Oh
people.
God, that is so cool. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have
And
to.
so
Yeah.
there's all this stuff going on, but one of the characters is um a transgender woman that is trying to get surgery, and her parents are trying to block it.
Yeah.
This is an emotional show.
Yeah.
This is like the most emotional show I've ever seen because
And it's
it's
called
by the Wachowski
Sunfight.
brothers. It was by the Wachowski brothers.
Oh,
I think it was after the first one became a Wachowski sister, but before the
wow.
second one did. So it was like deeply, deeply personal to them. And I didn't even realize it at the time. But
No,
I
that's
mean
amazing.
to when you watch the show, you enter into the story and you like really become, like a cheering for that
Yeah.
transgender person. It's like a paradigm shift. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's an actual person there. And so
Yeah.
it's like I think there are some shows that, to watch them and enter into somebody else's experience. Boys Don't Cry was another one that
I was
really.
telling my husband about, was it last night, babe, or the day before? And I was telling him, I go, at that time, transgender wasn't really a term that was used in the populace the way it is
Yeah,
today. And I
yeah,
said, I would think about it. I said, had you ever seen? I said, Boys Don't Cry. I said, gosh, it's been how many decades? And I said, but what I knew was I didn't care if Brandon Tina was born, it was her story, and what happened to her was brutal. And I think about Matthew Shepard, and I think about, but and I think about all of these movies and shows that were in our lives,
hmm,
telling these stories, but there weren't any particular sensate, that there weren't any particular terms, there were no box, but we just
yeah,
knew like this person was a human being and they were kind. And I don't
mhm,
see, and just things that start to, regardless of how you were brought up or what your idea, they stick with you, they stay in your soul,
mhm,
they stay in your soul.
yeah.
And that movie is one of them.
And it's
That,
like people are like, "Oh, well, that's just normalizing it." And it's like, no, it is not normalizing it. It is normal.
yes.
It's like it's what happens is it prevents you from being able to abnormalize it. It's once you start seeing people as people, it's hard to reject them as
Yeah.
people. And to understand there's what was what was that? It like for some reason whenever they want to show the sufferings of black people, they always go to the slave days, right? But there was a movie, I can't remember, Colors,
Oh gosh, I remember that movie.
and uh there's just there wasn't like the white savior, like Clint Eastwood didn't come and and there wasn't like the white savior teacher or whatever. Like you to realize that there are people that live entire existences that have nothing to do with white people,
Yeah.
and there's and there are I had a friend when I was in college. uh I was working for my church. Well, I wasn't really working for my church at the time. I was just as a member of my church. We had everybody, so people wouldn't go out and party. We didn't want to go out and party, so we would have host a dinner at my house,
Yeah.
and we would play Scrabble together. One of my friends' name was Edgar, and this was like 1992, 1993. I forget the exact, 93, I think. And this was after the trial for the guys that
The Rodney King.
no, the Reginald Denny, the guys that
Oh,
beat up
the
Reginald
guy.
Denny. Remember
Oh,
after the riot, after the Rodney King thing, those four black guys beat up the white guy.
yeah, the
And I
truck
was,
driver guy. The
yeah,
truck.
and um, I was like, well, I don't see the difference between four white people beating up a black person and four black
Yeah.
people beating up a white person. And we were good friends. We respected each other. We basically had a year-long debate about that I
Yeah.
lost. Eventually, I lost the debate, and by that I mean I won the debate because I had a realization. I was like, okay, there is a difference, and but one of the things he said to me was, um, uh, "Do you think of yourself as a white man?" I was like, "No, I just think of myself as a man." And he said, "That's because you can." And I was like, took
Touche.
me it took me a while to figure that one out. I was like, I get it because I am not seen as a white man. I am seen as a man. But he walks into a store and everybody sees a black man. You know, it's because society sees him that way. He is forced to see himself that way. Because
Yeah.
society doesn't see me as a white man, I am not forced to see myself as a white man. So, like people get, like, oh, why are black people always talking about race and stuff? And it's like because everybody's always talking about like, and the thing is, if you're not a racist person, you like if you're not an overtly racist person, you're not the problem is you don't see racism when it exists, and so I started becoming more aware and like one time I remember we went to a store together, and the guy was like watching Edgar to see if he was going to steal something. I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Edgar's got a master's degree and he's wearing a suit, and so of course the guy was even more suspicious of Edgar then. And I was watching him. I went up to the store manager. I was like, why don't you want me instead of him? I'm the
Yeah.
bum here. And so we go outside and Edgar laughs at me and he's like, do you think that's the first time that's happened to me? And it was anyway. I realized, that so then I started kind of like looking into things more and realizing, like, before there was the word anti-racist, I was learning I needed to become an anti-racist, and rather, like, if I saw a black person and had a negative thought, rather than just ignore the thought, I would reject the thought, like,
I think
like,
that
anyway.
no, Kelly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're a lot like my husband. You know, he grew up in a inclusive family and environment. He grew up in, well, I'm a Southerner, he's a Yankee, from New York, but it really took a while. It's still sinking into him of some things that upset me, like some things that I read or I see and I just cry, and he doesn't really understand, and I'm trying to explain it. He gets it, but he doesn't. Like you know what I mean? He hears me saying it, but because it's not something he has experienced, it's not something he really, and I get that. Like, you know, before my father died of COVID, I hadn't lost parents. And so I never felt it was my place to tell someone, oh, it's going to be okay. They're in a much better place. What the fuck? They don't want to hear that. Who the hell you know what I mean? Like, you start to realize, like, what did I just say? Do I realize how freaking douchey that sounded? Who am I to tell them that it's going to be okay? Because I don't know that it is. I don't know what, and everybody mourns, grieves, however long, in whatever way they do. I'm still grieve. My father's death, it's been 5 years.
And it's almost like you're telling people not to grieve when you say that.
Yeah.
All I do now is I just tell people, just grieve at your own pace.
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you how to grieve.
No, exactly. Or just, I'm so sorry for your loss. And that's it. Like, I can say that. But like, people will think in their mind that, and then someone gets upset, I was just trying to like give them work. Like, no, it's not about you. That's the thing. Like, you are wanting to put them on your grievement timeline, and it's not yours to dictate. It's not yours to tell them how. Well, when this happened, I just got over it, and and go, well, good for you, And here in El Paso, it's very disappointing because it's 80% Latino, but MAGA Hispanic friends that I have, or mutuals, to see them have turned that way. And I was commenting on someone's, like, I try not to engage because it's futile on Facebook, but I just saw a meme that was just in every line was, and I go, none of this is true. I said, why are you spreading misinformation and disinformation? I said, it's not about different sides of the aisle. I said, I am very happy if I get something wrong to be pointed out, that I'm grateful for that knowledge so I can move forward. I said, you have words. I will post a meme every now and then, but I'll, context it like, man, this cracked me up and blah, blah, blah. I said, you never use your own words. And someone came and goes, I know what my Hispanic ancestors went through. I just don't dwell on it. It's been about 3 weeks, Kelly, and I still am ranting over it. You don't dwell on it. I said, well, you know what? Rosa Parks dwelled on it.
Yeah.
I said, do you know how many things have been accomplished because we dwelled on it? I said, dwelling on it is the least that we can do, is dwell on it. I said, that is the most asinine. And every day I do still have to make a post. And I'm just like, really, I go, if we didn't dwell on it, there'd be nobody outside the ICE facilities protesting. There'd be no Kings protest on Saturday if we didn't dwell on it. And
Hmm.
dwell on it doesn't mean dwelling on what happened 100, 200 years ago. It can be what happened yesterday. It could be what happened 2, 3 weeks ago in Chicago in that apartment building.
Yeah.
It can be something that happened last week. When we stop dwelling on it is when, well, part of that is how we got here because people didn't want to dwell on it,
It's
you
the
know?
problem is that there's not enough white people that are willing to dwell on it. If we
Exactly.
started dwelling on it, then we might, you know, be able to do
That's
something about it.
that's 100% correct. And here in El Paso, I don't know one white person. Well, no, I know one white person, but everyone else that I've known for, most, it's like a small town on the side of town I live on. Not one didn't vote for Trump. They all voted for Trump. And that's because, and I was just very honest with someone. And I said, it's because they're a minority here and they're still salty over that. They are a minority. That other 20% is divvied up between Blacks, Asians. We have a thriving Jewish
Mm.
population, a thriving Arab population. The Arab and Jewish population, they actually own most of and that, they're small, but are so important to El Paso's community. And I take my boys to the Holocaust, the Holocaust Museum. And I just wanted to go into the history of the Jewish community in El Paso. And there was a time where they had to remain in Juarez and they weren't able to cross. And this is when, there were a lot of the, what do you call it, caps on the number of Eastern European Jewish people that
Mhm.
could come
Yeah.
into, yeah. And so they were coming and had to stay,
That was
remain
why
in
they,
Juarez.
for those that don't know, there used to be like laws that that limited immigration from countries
Yep.
based on how many people had already immigrated. There was like a percentage. So if hardly any Eastern Europeans came, then that means hardly any Eastern Europeans could come. And that was during the pogroms, which were
Yeah,
like persecutions of Jews. And that was to like it was basically to keep Jewish people from coming to the United States.
absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I didn't even know we had I wandered at the park, took my son to the park, and there were a Burmese festival. I didn't even know we had a Burmese population, but they were having a
Who
little
knew?
thing in the park.
I didn't
Now
realize this.
Myanmar, but I was like, wow, we have when I was
It must be
volunteering,
a great place to eat.
oh my gosh, we have this amazing Iranian restaurant. And the woman, she showed me this book because my son, he's 16 now and he loves it there. She offered him a job. He wasn't 16 yet because he loves the hummus. And she brought us this book that an employee of hers made. And it was all about the history of Iran,
Oh wow.
pictures and things. And she just felt so touched that, her being so far away, Armenian, we have a thriving Armenian population here. And we all divvy up that other 20%. But we have our first Black mayor, which is awesome this year. But they're they're salty because they're in the minority. And so I saw when my neighbor put up his Confederate flag in my neighborhood, and they've kind of are emboldened in a way, but still, but when I
It's okay
see,
to be racist again, you know.
yeah, but when I see my Latino friends or acquaintances, that to me is very, very disappointing because I'm like, we all know mixed status families. We all know whatever generation you are, whether it's first generation or fourth generation, it started somewhere. And how, I said that I take my kids to the history museum. I go, why is it that I know more about the history of El Paso when it was segregated between the three races, Black, white, and Mexican, and those who fought for, who were working in the factories fighting for equal rights, that you don't share any of that with your kids, any of that history. I said, but my kids know it. I said, I'm not trying to, but I'm saying, like, why would you not want to share that to let them know, like, you're now folding back into those who made it that situation in the first place. It boggles my mind. And they just get upset and it's like, oh, you just think you're shit. I'm sorry, they think you don't stink, that you think that you're better than. I go, it's not that. It's not about, I don't always think I'm right. I said, but facts are facts, you know. Facts are facts. And when I blatantly
Mhm.
see something that isn't one, you are perpetuating, you are engaging and enabling the ignorance that is keeping us where we are and allowing these atrocities and things to happen, because you're lack the ability to blame the corporations or blame those who you voted for, or blame. It's just easier to blame and nothing gets done. But if we all came together and you actually held your reps accountable who you vote for, then they'd realize, oh crap, we can't keep this up anymore. The veil's lifted. We got to do something now.
So, like during the 2020 protests, and there was it just became kind of almost, I hate to use the word, but faddish. And, like a lot of white people would, like they'd be like, I'm an ally, and they'd almost wear like I'm an ally t-shirts or whatever. But then it's like, now you can't hear from them, DEI is getting attacked all over the place. And, they're like, well, Charlie Kirk didn't really mean that black people can't fly planes. Like I feel like there need to be allies, but I even hate to use the word allies because it got tainted by overuse. It's like when people say don't obey in advance. I sometimes I think things just become cliche too
Yeah.
easily. But with that, how can I be an ally? How can we be allies, like where we can sincerely help without becoming condescending and feeling like we're taking over or whatever?
That is a good question. And I completely get what you were saying. Like, I felt like in the beginning, after George Floyd's murder, in the beginning, what people witnessed, they were genuinely horrified. And then the protests started and people wanted to be involved. But, then of course the chaos agents get involved, and then it just got, they took their ball and went home. It was easier for them to do that than to listen. We're saying, like, this actually wasn't the protesters, like these were outside agitators and this and that.
Mhm.
But it, and that to me was a red flag. It made me think, as you said, faddish, that their heart really wasn't in it.
And some of them were doing it deliberately. Like the Minneapolis precinct that was burned down by Boogaloo Boys.
Yeah.
And that's not a conjecture. They were convicted of it. Like, this is, and they all, the Republicans always want to say, oh, you're burning down buildings. And they point to that one in particular. And it's like, no,
It's
you
always
guys burned down that one.
it's always two. They use Minneapolis, and then they use the 2 blocks of Portland. Those are the
Yeah.
only two. And they'll say,
Yeah.
well, when you were burning our cities to the ground, it was like, I don't know, Tulsa might like a word. And Rosewood, Utah, the many other cities that were actually burned to the ground. But I just think, keep doing what you're doing. Like, just be yourself. Be there. Don't feel forced in anything that you say, or like, I have to say this or I have to say it this way. And it may not always come out in a way that comes across like you saying, like, you didn't even think about women being in abusive relationships and that being a reason, even though you were pro reproductive health care choice, and you were, but that wasn't an area. Being honest and transparent about what you didn't always realize or think about. And, when I made a post about a week or so ago, I said something that stays with me when I was, in my CASA work. I said, when we think about kids removed from homes for, foster care, abuse and neglect, or moved, we always give all our resources to the women. We want to reunite the women. We want the women to show what we want. And we just kind of put the men over to the side as if they're just some, scallywag or whatever. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's not always the case. And I had one where it was one of my last before, I was ran out by Abbott. But the mother never showed up, not once. never showed up to one meeting to try to, and I'm all about family reunification. And the father was
Mhm.
inconsistent, but he did show up. You know, like I said, inconsistent, but he did. And whenever they move, it's my job to like find out where they are, because I have to at least know what address, where are they, so I can make sure I keep them involved. And they were staying with someone, and she relayed to me that the father was a product of rape, and that his entire life his mother never let him forget that. And I hadn't even bothered to ask. And that's because, like I said, we were so focused on the moms. And though I like to think I'm not being judgmental, I was being judgmental because I didn't give him the equal time,
Mhm.
equal attention, you know. And like I said, even though he wasn't consistent, he was at least trying. And maybe if there was at least one person that gave him a little support, it might have, you know.
You made a
So
difference.
yeah, made a difference. So what you saying, like, just just keep all things in mind. Like, now that you do know, think about all the different areas and avenues that a woman experiencing XYZ, or, you know, for me, my son is 16, and I think about his mental health. I think about, you know, I know he has friends, but are they really friends? Are they really, if something were to happen, I think about my own. Would he go into that pile of, well, we don't know what happened, he should have just complied, or he should have, like, just just be a human, who, whoever that is. And if that's not in you, I know that's not you, but those who do force, that's not really who they are, because when times get tough, when times are like they are now, they're nowhere to be found. Then they'll give you the, I don't really pay attention to politics. That's the line they like to use now, you know? And I was talking to my husband, and I said, a line, when you ask people, why do you vote for Trump? Because of where things are now, they'll kind of revert to the same kind of, oh, well, you know, I voted for him because he was a businessman. And I voted for him because this. I said, instead of asking them that, ask them, why didn't you vote for Kamala? I said, because that's where your real answer is going to come. Because they won't be expecting it, number one, and two, they won't have a canned answer for it.
Mhm.
Whatever it is they try to, you know, they're going to be forced to answer, and that is where your answer is going to lie. You know, they rely on you asking the same questions so that they can kind of slither away. And like I said, give the same, well, you know, he's just this, and oh, people just don't like him, and that's why didn't you vote for Kamala? That's my question. Why? Just pretty simple. I'm sure you know the answer, right?
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
And so, well, first, Tiny Ripple. You're at Ty Ross, right?
Yeah, well, at Cool Texas Chick.
At Cool Texas Chick, and her name on Twitter is Mike Pence's other mother. So.
Kelly, I used to be Lindsey Graham's gynecologist, but that was in my early days. That was in my like 400 follower days.
I was for a while. I was like, I just could not think of a name. Like I would change my name every once in a while, and then like I don't follow rap music at all. Like, and I had never heard of Machine Gun Kelly, and there was something about him and what's her name, the Fox.
Oh,
Uh,
Megan Fox.
yeah,
Yes.
there was some kind, and I was like, I'd take one look at that name, and I thought of the gangster before, but for some reason, and I just looked at his name, I was like, Machine Pun Kelly.
I love
Like
it. It's perfect.
like so that's been about 12 years now that I've stuck with Machine Pun Kelly, and I'm kind of used it across all my social media. You couldn't think of a better name for me right now. So
That
what
is.
one thing when you were talking that I was thinking about is um I just think that there's real value to talking to people that are not the same as you. Um
Oh, absolutely.
I worked with my last job. I worked with a transgender woman, and I worked there for like a month before she told me she was transgender. Like she wasn't very, and she said, you know, don't tell anybody else. But then I talked to her for more than an hour several times to like really understand what her experience was, and not I don't want to say what the transgender experience was, but what her transgender experience was, because
Yeah, absolutely.
everybody's experience is different. And you know, I just think that I had a young man on the show. I don't know if you know Ben. He's on Twitter, but he has autism. He's in Scotland.
I do know. Yes, yes, I do
So
know that.
he was on the show, and I got to talk to him. And actually, I was he's a pretty charming young man. Like
He really is.
he and he's a really sweet kid. And then you know, I like to have people that are different than me on the show. I also every once in a while, I think if I met somebody that really was like me, I wouldn't like them. I'd be like, why are you always talking over me?
I get, I no, I totally get that, and where my husband works, it's a it's probably the nicest restaurant on this side of town. Like we don't really have a whole lot of chains or whatever. It's been around a long time. Most of the people that go in there, it's like he's got job security basically. You know, already wealthy people have been going there forever. And I went in the other day, like I'm picking him up, and he's like, "Want to come in for a drink?" And the first thing I see is this guy with the "Make America Great Again" hat. And there's this guy the other day, and he had his white and gold 47 hat on. And I just kind of look, and people will see me sometimes, and they'll on a chit chat, and then they'll see, and I'm chit chatting, and he was telling me that one of his one of the hostesses, she goes, "Why is she talking to them? They're racist as hell." And he's like, "Oh, she knows that."
She's pretty aware. I
But
have
it's
I have experiences. Like one time I was taking my dog to the vet. I'm just sitting there minding my own business, and this guy, because I'm in Elgin, you know, and Elgin, Texas, and I'm just sitting there minding my own business, and this guy comes down and he sits across from me, and he just starts going on about Trump, and he's like talking about how Hillary. This was in 2016, and
yeah.
how Hillary Clinton was a liar, and I was just like, I just had to look up. I was just like, dude, you're gonna vote for Hillary you're gonna tell me about Donald Trump, and you're gonna call her a liar. And I just lit into him. And it's like people assume that just because I'm a middle-aged cisgender white male, I'm a racist, you know? And like other racists will always assume I'm a racist because I'm white. Like, and it's like, boy, he was not prepared for that. I lit into him so bad, and then like I was going on for about a good 12 minutes. And when they finally came in, I didn't let him get in a word. And the vet tech came and called his name. Man, I never saw anybody move that fast in my life. He was so happy to get out of there.
I, it's it's kind of I'm a study of human behavior. It fascinates me. And so a lot of times in my life, because of certain financial situations I've been in, I've been the only Black person in non-Black spaces.
Hmm.
And so I've learned a lot about people's behavior, how people react, treat me. And I used to go in New Mexico in Rio Doso. It's all MAGA there at the country club. The only two Black people were myself and the Black people they import from South Africa every year to work
Uh-huh.
during the season, that are, serving my food. And that was a weird, and I'm sitting, and I'm like, they literally import people, and I'm listening to the guy. I'm sitting here, I'm on the golf course, he's running the cart outside, and it's the next season. I said, "Hey Joseph, good to see you again." He goes, "Yes." He's like, "I can get and I don't want to laugh, but it just kind of tickled me because I thought about us in my Eddie Murphy voice from Coming to America. He goes, "I can get 2 goats instead of one." It just, because I'm the accent, and then I just go, oh my god. But he was just so nice. But I wanted to get to know, like, how did they find you? Like, this is New
Mhm.
Mexico. Like, how'd they find all these employees in South Africa to come up here, you know, during the season, and when I would go to certain, like, restaurants and things. But I never felt mistreated. I mean, there were a couple of times, but I don't wear
No,
my
you want
race
to
on
know
my
something
sleeve.
surprising? The country, like, to get a temporary work visa, the country that get that the most come in on, I'm sure you will, not be surprised, is Mexico. The second most is South Africa.
Are you serious? The second? I
Yes.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I had only met one South African before in my life, and he was white. Like, I'd never met a black South African. So to see them year after year here working at this country club in New Mexico, I was just kind of fascinated, but also talking to the people there because they're wondering, and you could tell how what I was doing there, how I knew the manager comes up and, hey, good to see you back again. And they're in their mind because they're like, they're wealthy, but I'm in the same space. I have a
Mhm.
table when they didn't have a table. As soon as I come, oh, hey, I've got this here. They're actually asking to sit at our table, which was kind of funny. But you kind of get that, but then getting to talk to people, as you said, like kind of just talking, like seeing where they're from. And these were people that were coming from McAllen to like oil money. They'd come up during the season to their second half, and stay. But just talking to them, and I knew they were all MAGA, but they weren't all like crazy. Well, I won't even say MAGA, conservative in the tradition, the sense that we
Mhm.
would think of. But even MAGA that I've talked to, and they're wearing their hat, and you know, I'll kind of like in a joking way, and it was like, oh, see, I like, and just to kind of get them going, because I want to hear. But sometimes asking questions isn't the best way because people might feel they're being confronted or they're being judged. But when you
Mhm.
put in a conversational setting and you're having a shot and you're just like, so tell me, like, they're a lot more open. They're not as guarded because they feel like it's a safe space. Like maybe they're thinking I'm Candace Owens or something. I don't know, but whatever. But they, but I've
And
had to, but they have, and I was like, no, I was actually a real Republican. But, but I get to, I have these conversations and it really, really gets me into like their mind of thinking. And what I've realized is most of the time, it's always the same. There really isn't a real, like if I was to go to freaking Iowa and talk to a farmer, like their reasonings, whether or not I agree from their standpoint and perspective, I could feel valid. Like you could, like they really believed he was going to, But
Mhm.
but those people, they're the country club. They weren't doing it because of
They're
that.
getting exactly what they
They
voted for. Those
they
are
are getting
they're
exactly.
the 1% that like they voted for get more money and be able to own people and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is, but it is also frustrating because, and I get where a lot of people like myself are at this point where we're like, I don't have the energy anymore. Now I need to put this energy into moving forward because there is a certain amount of the population that is too far gone to a certain extent, but there are still independents, there are still reachables, there are still, you know, center old school, just what happened during 2020, the whole Republican voters against Trump campaign, the whole Lincoln Project. And when you see all these people that voted, and then even during Kamala's, like people that, I'm in Montana.
There was a
Here,
time if you had told me Steve Schmidt would become one of my favorite followers on Twitter, I
I,
would have just I would have hurt myself laughing.
I have my issues with him with the whole Dean thing, but but I
Oh, you talking about the Scream?
this
Dean
what
Scream?
the guy was running for what was that party they were trying to siphon votes away from Biden. with Andrew Yang and the what was the name of
Oh,
that?
that thing. Okay, yeah.
Was it the No Labels? Was that what it was?
No, was he part of that?
Was that he was like the head, like the fundraising guy for them?
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't get all the way into it because it was just a whole ass mess. But yeah, it was there was some there was some backlash of him being involved with with that. Especially coming off of, 2020, and it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, come on. Like, we need to be building on this, not, you know. But it let me know though that it was possible, and to see how many people came out for the Last No Kings protest, the hands off. I mean, millions upon millions. Every one of those persons is not a liberal or a Democrat. Though what's going on at the town halls, what AOC and Bernie are doing,
Mhm.
and and going to the areas. But something I did see that someone kind of I don't know if it was Tony Michaels, and they were like, well, so and so went and they talked to Democrats, and I think it was Tony Michaels, and he said, yes, talking to Republicans or talking to Republicans and talking to farmers are two different things.
Mhm. That is. I actually talked to Tony about that on the show,
Yeah.
and my brother is running for office,
Yes, I saw that.
and so the votes he's trying to get are almost all farmers
Yeah.
or farmer adjacent. Like living in, like, his constituency is very
Yeah.
very rural and partly suburbs, but no urban, and so and it's like an R+30 district that he's trying to flip. And so I was thinking, and I gave him this idea, and I think he's going to do it. I was like, you should just have everything, like, if you have a town hall, have people, like, have somebody that voted for Trump and somebody that voted for Harris, like, just pull out a $10 bill.
Yeah.
And ask them what color their $10 bill is. They're both going to say green, and you're going to be like, okay, there's no blue $10 bill, there's no red $10 bill. Green, all your money is green. And that's what, we need to be for, is we need to be for, like, forget about all this culture war stuff and everything. Like, what's
Exactly.
going to actually save your farm? What's going to actually save your business?
Yeah.
How is your child going to be able to, get their health care? And, like, let's just make I think that it's not about reaching out to MAGAs, and it's not even about reaching out to conservatives. It's about switching the dynamic of the conversation between from a Republican talking to a Democrat, or a Democrat talking to a Republican, and it needs to be about a representative talking to a constituent. Because that I don't feel like Ted Cruz represents either one of us, or even cares whether he does. Like, we're his constituents, whether we voted for him or not.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, that's 100%. And also, I think that instead of talking to
Listen.
those that you're trying to get the vote, exactly, ask the questions instead of telling the farmer, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do, pull the farmer up and say, what is it that you need? What is it that your farm needs? What is it that is lacking on your farm? What is it that you haven't been able to do?
Yeah.
What is it that we could do better to help you so that we can keep this farm in your next generation that you can pass on? Asking,
I was thinking of this. If you had a town hall, imagine this. You have a town hall, and somebody, and you say, like, somebody stands up and says what they want. And instead of, like, giving your program talking point that's somewhat adjacent to what they're saying, have a notepad and a pen and take notes about what they're saying, and saying, that's something really valid. I want to look into that more. Do you mind if I send you an email next week that addresses this? And then you actually did that. That's how you start. Can you imagine a politician, like, not just listening to you, but actually responding? There was a letter to the editor I read from a guy in New York that hated Hillary Clinton, but something happened, and he needed, like, something had happened where he had gotten turned down for a license or something that he should not have been turned down for, and somehow it got up to Hillary Clinton, and it was while she was senator there, and he called her and told her about it, and she said, "Let me get back to you." And so she fixed the problem, and then like a week later, she called him back. It should have, so he's like all happy it got fixed. She called him back. She didn't. Her assistant didn't call him back. She called him back and said, "I just wanted to make sure this all went through and everything." And he's like, "Yeah," but he's like, "Don't tell me she doesn't.
Yeah. No,
Don't tell me she doesn't care.
that
I
makes
didn't even vote for her, and she cared." I cannot imagine Ted Cruz doing that.
100% no. He will. He is. I just, for the sake of your show, I will just zip it, lock it, put it in my pocket.
You can.
But
Fornication is a good substitute word.
but it just and just full transparency and disclosure. So I was looking for something, another place to advocate, and I'm not gonna say their name. I was brought to them. They were advocating for schools, and found out that even my son's school, but dozens of schools didn't have air conditioning. And so what they were doing is, most of the people on the school board, Republican leaning, they were all in the pockets of the voucher school owners.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them didn't even have kids, so they're basically making our school so awful that they're like, "Oh, you should need a new alternative," that kind of trickery. So we were canvassing, trying to flip the school board, trying to save. And I texted Beta because I, worked with Powered by People, registering people to vote for him and everything. And I had sent him some pictures I took. He's like, "Here, send them to me." And I said, "Hey, I know you're traveling. You're in Austin most of the time, but this is what's going on in El Paso. And they're trying to close, 12 schools. We got that reduced to 10. Then the organization I was with, we got 2 pushed back. Then it was left to 6. One was only one of 5 A-rated schools in the state. It's poor, but when I was canvassing at the school to let parents know so they could show up to the school board meeting, a lot of them didn't even know it was closing. There was no transparency. They would say, "Oh, we're having a redistricting meeting," but wouldn't tell you what it was about, wouldn't allow you to talk, So we were out there at all the schools, and we're canvassing, trying to flip the school board. We did flip it, whatever. But I said, "Hey, if you can't, we're having our next community meeting. If you're not in town, if you could send another representative from Powered by People, like people here that on your behalf." He was like, "Oh, I don't want to see Lamar closed." So I thought, that's great. So yeah, I said, "I'll keep you posted." So I'm like, so the day of the school board meeting, no one ever showed up, never anything else. And he was in Alabama with Doug Jones, who I love, but Doug Jones is from Alabama. You know what I mean? Beto's here, and he claims to have cared like we start at the local level. And even just a tweet with his following his voice, alerting people, letting people know in El Paso who didn't necessarily know that, because your school could be next, But he came here with Jasmine Crockett, and I was super excited because I was like, "Oh shit!" So I got to see him and
Did you meet her?
Jasmine.
Did you get to meet her?
I did not. They kept everything closed. It was supposed to be a town hall. Nobody got to answer a question. But I was talking to the group, and I said, "Well, I'll be there tonight." I said, "If I get called on," I said, "I am going to challenge Beto, and I'm going to ask him." It's like, "I appreciate what you're saying." I said, "But we had some issues going on here, and I reached out to you." And I said, "But you were nowhere to be found. You didn't use your voice to amplify. So how are we supposed to, as an entire community, feel about you being there for us when you couldn't even be there for the youngest of us who, And the whole thing was, we were using as kind of an edge was, Biden was in office. Oh, Inflation Reduction Act, it'll pay for converting of the air conditioning system, solar, blah, 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 blah. That was our way for people that were concerned about tax dollars, like learning how, if I came across a Republican when I was canvassing, money, finance. That's what they want to talk about. Learning how to move between different spaces. But one of the women, she goes, why do that? Why don't you just ask him instead to to join us. Well, that kind of set me off, Kelly. And I said, do you remember when after canvassing, we were at, where's my battery? I said, we were eating and you came up to me and you asked me how my experience was with Powered by People. And I said, it was a little disappointing. I said, while it was great in getting the drive out for the presidential race, local races are just as important and they're not involved in any of those. Nothing about the school board, nothing about city council, nothing about the mayor's race.
Mhm.
I said, so I was disappointed in that if you are about people getting, sorry, I got to plug up my phone.
Go ahead,
registering
take
to vote.
you got it. You got
But
it.
yeah, I go, but it should be all people, not just for the presidential race. So you
Mhm.
should be involved at every step. And this is Beto's hometown. And I'm telling him. And then I said, do you remember then that you said, oh, well, you know, Beto and Amy, like it was a flex and you're friends with them? I said, why didn't you ask him to be a
Mhm.
part of this organization? Because you were here well before I was. And you
Mhm.
specifically mentioned that you were friends. So it would seem to me that they would be way more open to. And I'm not gonna lie, Kelly, that pissed me off because it made me
I
feel
don't blame you.
like okay. And I kind of left them because they've been around a year. Yes, we flipped the school board. That's great. But I go, where's the pivot? I said, you know, most of the schools that are closing and the people that work with our organization, we're in the poor side of, you know, El Paso. Do we not talk about what they can do for ICE or providing during the community meetings, what their rights are? I said, my son's school was rated. One of the schools that's in our was rated. And I said, we should incorporate that into our community meetings. Said, and also all this money to flip the air conditioning, that's not going to happen because Biden's not in office anymore. So what is the pivot? We can't keep running on air conditioning. How is it going to get fixed? Where's that money going to come from? I said they would rather
They
close our
don't have.
school.
I'm sorry. I just got it.
Yeah,
They don't have air conditioning in the schools in El Paso.
yeah. There are 23 schools, mostly elementary. So, and Abbott has deemed that doors and windows have to be locked during class. So kids aren't allowed to go out, get water. What they do was, when last time they got a bond, they put air conditioning
That's
in the
like
office. They put it
hot
in the
in El
office and
Paso,
in the
right? Like,
gym where parents would be for recitals and when
uh,
parents go to the office. But the classrooms, when I say 100-something degree, triple degree digit heat, and the kids, yeah,
that's gonna that's got to be hard to learn in that temperature.
yeah, no, it absolutely is. And like I said, they had a moment to really like, let's put a grant together. Let's do, like, I'm an action person. And I'm like, but it's just like, oh yes, we're doing this, but nothing was done. And so I'm like, but you're still talking about all these schools without air conditioning, but the window has closed on you to try to get or even apply for any grants. I said, so you got people involved. I said, so how do you keep them involved? How you keep them involved is not talking about, so we're now we spend an entire 2 hours on, we're creating a board of directors. And I go, whoa, 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 whoa. That's a little bureaucratic sounding to me. Like, we're supposed to be a community organization. You've been around a year. Like I go, the focus now should be on what the pivot is, keeping the community informed. Like, hey, we have a new administration, but these are some resources Texas has, or this or that. I go, what is it? What is the next thing? You don't want to talk. Oh, we're not talking about immigration right now. We literally have bilingual sections. We're in the poor part of town. Everybody here is Hispanic. Many don't speak English.
ICE is
Some are
going to come to
undocumented.
your schools. Like, even if you're not Hispanic, there's Hispanic kids there, and ICE is going into schools. You don't think he's going to go into the one that your kid's in?
Exactly. And but it was just so disappointing because I was like, I was just feeling like, oh, this is feeling very, very Animal Farmy to me. That
Mm.
you start coming in like we're going up against, and then now you're like, so we're going to do a board of directors. And if you say something we don't like, we can remove you at any time. And so in these meetings, and then I raised my hand, it's like, I'll talk to you later. Because you already knew what I was gonna bring up. So it's not me to get other people's minds like, yeah, like why is that? You know what I mean? So I'm like, why are we talking about 2 hours on a board of directors? What do we need a board of directors for? It's like
I was thinking
I don't.
yesterday, kind of connected to what you're saying. The way the Democrats treated David Hogg, like instead of letting new young voices go, and I was just like, we were talking about that, and I just thought about like what a contrast between the way the Democrats treated David Hogg and the way the Republicans treat Charlie Kirk. Like, and they wonder why we're losing ground on the college campuses. Like, we could have like let Charlie Kirk or let David Hogg run free, yeah, and it would have been amazing. Like he definitely and what, because he's not on board with, you know, like Nancy Pelosi being, you know, another term like into her hundreds or whatever. Like, come on, we need new voices. Like I'm, you know, I've always been a supporter of Nancy Pelosi, but come on, you know, it's like we don't need people to like be in Congress until they die. We don't, you know, like Dianne Feinstein like was way past her time.
Oh my God. And that's not taking away from all of the, you know, the strides that Feinstein and Pelosi made, you know, at a time where strong women's voices, however, there
Like,
comes
I think
also
that
a
you can
time.
argue Nancy Pelosi was the best Speaker of House in history. Like,
Yes.
but still, you know, step aside, let somebody new come along, you know?
Exactly. But what that does is like Feinstein, by the time that she passed, all the young generation knew was this quote unquote old woman hanging on to power and not even able to show up and participate, or Pelosi being out of, so they don't even know because they're not our age. They only know what they have been experiencing and they feel ignored. They feel like their voices aren't heard. And when there are voices, that they're stifled. And another thing I'm always still salty with Pelosi about is what she did to Representative, what was her, Katie Hill, who had the revenge porn, that she did not stick up for her. Like,
Mhm.
not just as a Democrat, but that was a woman thing to do. As such
Yeah.
a pioneer that Pelosi was, she basically let a woman go out in shame who had been shamed through no fault of her own except having a husband who was an a-hole. You know what I mean? And that would have said a lot. It would have said a lot to women her age and younger who experience that, because that is rampant these days, to know that they, you know, but just to silence and then what happened? Her seat flipped back red. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. You know?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I forgot
But
about that. There's some and you know, I mean, anyway. So Saturday is kind of a big day. You've heard? Did you hear about this thing? Where
I heard little here and there,
um
something about kings. I don't know.
do you know what the going rate from George Soros is for this one?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm thinking this is going to be big. I'm thinking we're going to probably bankrupt him finally because,
Yeah.
you know,
I
I
heard
think
it's
this is
even
the final
going over.
blowout here.
Yeah. He can only have so much money. The uh-oh.
Right?
Yeah. But and you know, I don't know if you're a terrorist or Hamas, but or if you just hate America, but apparently it's one of those three things.
It's one of the. Uh, I have been watching. They finally found a talking point. They feel like that after throwing all the spaghetti for what the no king. So now they're running with the it's anti-American, I hate America protest thing. And the whole, oh, they're ISIS and Antifa and oh, we've locked down the headquarters and we're gonna go and my mind is and I'm like,
And they're
I,
with all this hate rhetoric. Like
yeah,
they talk about how we got Charlie Kirk killed with all our hate rhetoric, and then they, you know, like Okay, what did we get? What did we say that got Charlie Kirk killed? That
Exactly.
transgender are human beings? Like it wasn't even. It was Nick. It was Charlie Kirk that got Charlie Kirk killed. If you want to be honest, he was the one that was doing the anti-trans stuff that pissed him off. But anyway, it's like they call. I've been called a communist my entire life, and then all of a sudden, just because they're a complete fascist, we're not allowed to use that word.
No,
Anyway,
they've railed about communism, and then when communism comes,
yeah.
they're like squirrel. Like,
Oh, oh yeah, yeah. With him with the orange guy trying to get government ownership of every American corporation.
and college and dictate who's
Yeah,
working there, who's like, it's insane. Now Saturday, I my main concern is the kind of escalation they're going to try, and of course they're gearing up for it. However, there may be what, I don't know, 100,000 Stasi, however how many millions, 14, 15 million came out en masse. And with that amount of, I'm just say, I've got to work on Saturday, but just watch the rooftops is my word of advice, because there's not going to be really much any other way than they're going to be. They're going to be so unprepared, and it's going to be so overwhelming. And that's what they want. They want to deter people from going, because they know of how the turnout was at the last protest, that they know. So they're going to
yeah.
try to have all hands on deck. So, people that do show up, that's going to say a lot more. If
I
we
think
don't
it's
make
going to
this
be
the biggest
bigger,
event,
and I keep saying we need to be too big to jail. Remember, too
yeah,
big to fail. We need to be too big to jail. Like have so many people that they cannot just say, "Oh, there's 30 million terrorists that showed up that are
yeah,
paid by George." Like at a certain point, you just have to say, "Okay, these are actually people that are really upset that we're going out and violating every aspect of the Constitution there is to violate." Like I just
yeah,
counted it up last week. They've like violated 7 or 8 of the different amendments. They've violated all 3 of the articles of the Constitution. There's 50 lawsuits against him for violating Article 1. There's another 70 for violating Article 2, another 50 for violating Article 3, and there's 120 for violating the balance of powers. So, he's got like 500 lawsuits against him for violating the Constitution, but somehow we're the ones that hate America.
we are the anti-American, the hateful. But the thing is, arrogance is arrogance is going to be their downfall. The stupidity is one thing, but some of the other guys aren't as dumb, but they are arrogant. And that always comes full circle. Always. And they've gotten real full of themselves
Yeah.
in this short amount of time, rather than, kind of sprinkling it, and then before you realize what's going on, crud, it's too late. They just went all in. That's it.
They just went
You know,
explosive diarrhea all over the place.
all
And
over
so
the
now
place.
there's just shit everywhere. Like,
Yes, they shot their load pretty early, but they've also let us know where this is headed. And like I said, the arrogance. It's the arrogance. And uh, I don't care what side are you on. People don't like cocky people. They don't like arrogance. Like they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's so and so. His dad owns that local Walmart or that gas station. He thinks he like." People don't like it. I don't care if you're rural. I don't care if you're in the city. People don't like arrogance. People don't like, you know, people stepping on them like that and treating them as if they're stupid,
mm,
regardless. But
yeah,
treating them as if, like when these town halls, and they would say, oh yeah, all these Democrat, and then they'd get booed down because it was basically saying that your constituents don't have a voice,
Hmm.
that they don't care. So you go around doing that, and they're like, no, that was me, your constituent. I voted for you, and I'm letting you know that I'm not happy. And that, and that is another thing that's gonna really come back to bite them. And I'm really looking forward to Saturday in Aspect. I love to, and I love how it catches on worldwide. I love to see the worldwide protests in solidarity with us.
I
Let's,
think that's
yeah,
incredible. And
yeah,
and there's also like, I think there's other things that are like the farmers, and I say the farmers, not the MAGAs. They're literally losing their farms. That's not hypothetical to them. It's not like Donald Trump can say, "Oh, you're not really losing your farm." They're really losing their farms. And when you have people like that go and they pay, I think it's 16% more for beef, 22% more for coffee, 4% more for milk and eggs, like in just 9 months,
yeah,
not even a whole year. And it's like you've got real inflation. And he's like, oh, you're paying 5,000% less for, uh,
yeah,
for pharmaceuticals. And it's like, okay, fine. How about I just go to the store? You can throw in a little medical marijuana in with my grocery cart, and then you can pay me to take everything out. And then I can go home, I can get stoned, and then I have the food for when I get the munchies. Everything's
yeah.
perfect. But they won't do that, I don't think. But
No,
like it's just, I think that there's like being lied to about, whether Kamala Harris really worked at McDonald's. And then there's being lied to about whether or not you're spending more at the grocery store, or whether or not you're actually losing your farm, or whether or not you have a job. Like those are things where you can't lie to them and have them say, "Oh yeah, you're right, I do have a job."
yeah,
And I'm going to release an article either today or tomorrow, or a video. Been doing a lot of research on this, and it's the economy is getting artificially masked by AI, and there's a lot of underpinnings that the economy, we are basically, if you're not in the top 20% and have stock in AI, you're in a recession. Like we're in a recession with the exception of a few people. And everybody else knows it. Like that you're struggling. You know that you have less money at the end of the month. And you're going to know it even more when your insurance doubles.
yep,
Even if you're making $60,000-$70,000 a year, when you're paying $1,000 a month for your health insurance instead of 500, and you were thinking about buying a new car, that's your car payment. You can't get
yep,
that car anymore. He can't lie to you about that. Like I think we're getting to the point where people are going to be like, no, I know this. You can lie to me about other stuff, but this I know.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, no. My stepsister was asking my sister-in-law if the boys went to school. They're on intercession, so they went to
Uh,
year-round school here in El Paso, but they are out for 2 weeks in October, then a week for Thanksgiving, then 2.5 weeks for Christmas, then 2 weeks in March.
oh
I'm
my!
like, what is this
These are they
year-round
members of
school?
Congress?
Yeah, that and then 6 weeks vacation during the summer. But I go, all you've done is for single parents, people that have to pay daycare, who rely on that. Now they've got these 2 weeks to scramble, these extra 2 weeks when their kids should be in school. Holidays
Mm-hmm.
is one thing, all these extra additional weeks that now they have to find, and it's like, when are they in school? It's insane. It's literally insane here. This, but Kelly, my dear, thank you so much for having me on. I have to make dinner before I have to go to work in a couple hours and throw something in the oven, chicken cacciatore or something.
Thank you for coming on today. The tie goes to the winner. So I I really appreciate you coming on. You're a delightful person. Everybody
Thank
should follow you. Uh, now, do you have anything you want to pitch in terms of like uh any organizations or anything you've written or?
Not really any organizations right now. I have been reading. If you go to Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, my book, The Power of Perspective: Gaining Clarity, Purpose, and Truth Through Affirmation. And it was a book that helped me work through issues that I was going through and get to a better and healthier mental space for myself and moving forward. How to deal with relationships, whether it was familial, work relationships, friendships, relationships with my kids, how my relationship with myself. And it's
Mhm.
under T.R. Armstrong, which is my pen name. But I've been rereading that a lot lately. I'll go to certain passages when I'm just really just kind of in a funk
Mhm.
and depressed, just to remind me that, you know, it doesn't matter where you are. As long as you're making progress, whether it's big steps, little steps, it doesn't matter. That's all that matters. Whether that's today you just got out of bed, today you made it to the kitchen, tomorrow you maybe went to the store, like it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. But it's just when you put things into perspective, it allows you to see things and handle things in a different way. You can come at them from a different place, and then we'll probably get a different result as a result of taking that kind of mindset instead of being stubborn, and
Mhm.
about holding ourselves accountable. That's the first and foremost, to hold yourself accountable, hold yourself responsible. That's it.
I was just kind of had a epiphany this week. Like I was saying, you find empathy for others by reading, I think, but you find empathy for yourself by writing. Like
I
you
agree
don't
with
just
that.
get to know who you are, you get to like actually have compassion for yourself and understand yourself by doing it. And so I think writing is super, super therapeutic. So
Absolutely. 100%, because as far as I'm concerned, the hardest person to forgive is yourself.
mhm.
We will reserve it for everyone else, but not ourselves. And
Except
we will.
Donald Trump.
Yes, that
Donald
is.
Trump will forgive the only one Donald Trump will forgive. Of course, he doesn't need to forgive himself because he's never done anything wrong.
No, that's true. He is a perfect individual. That
You
is
want you want to
definitely.
hear my pun for the day before you go?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you know how Donald Trump's like a chicken. So when he wakes up every day, he goes cockle doodle doo, right? So one day he wakes up, he says cockle doodle doo, and then Stephen Miller comes barging in the room, and and Donald's like, "What are you doing in here?" And Stephen Miller says, "Oh, I thought you said any cuck will do."
With his bad hearing, I believe it. He's from the outside of it. Thank you so much, Kelly, for having me on. I love you. Keep doing what you're doing, friends.
All right, thanks for coming on.
Bye.
Talk to you later.